Problems is when no iPhone, and no problems is when you have an iPhone. Have you ever thought about how we're literally not all getting executed at all points in time of the day? Yeah, that's what I thought. Be thankful. I thought this was interesting. I told you all a little bit about this, and I still think it's like super duper interesting, right? So a little while ago, there was a video that was uploaded about a week ago now. A video was uploaded by a guy, and it's titled, "Why Are So Many Americans Anti-America?" All right, which I think is an interesting question. And you can come at this from a lot of angles. You know, there's a lot of reasons for why some people may dislike the country, you know, from being inside of it. Many people think many a thing. The thumbnail, honestly, is Tucker Carlson and AOC saying America is like a Hanna-Barbera expletive or something. You know what I mean? So I guess we'll just, you know, figure out what he thinks, and then we can talk about it. Who knows? You'll never know until you watch.
Friends, my name is JJ, and I just got back from sunny California, where I was having fun with all of my YouTuber buddies at the fabulous VidCon. I love spending time in the US, and I wish I had opportunities to do it more often. So many great, wonderful, friendly people in America. I feel like every time I cross the border, I make like a dozen new friends. But I will tell you one thing I do not like about Americans, and that is the
this mustached fat. Is this guy a mustached? JJ's a centrist? Okay, well then maybe this video will be interesting. I wouldn't say that he's comparing, I mean, as far as I know, he's not comparing Tucker Carlson and AOC to be like the same type of different. I hope not, at least. I guess we'll find out. A boot? He is Canadian, so I guess we'll see.
Relentless, smothering, obnoxious pessimism that I feel has come to define so much of American culture these days. You know, this idea that everything in America sucks, that being an American sucks, that the future of America is terrible and bleak, and that everything America does is either cringe or evil, while everything that the other countries do is like a million times better. As an outsider, I feel like this is a sentiment that I have noticed becoming more and more mainstream over like the last 20 years or so. 2 decades ago, the idea
Well, here's the thing. A lot of America does suck. A lot of things in America do suck, right? And a lot of people die because of that suffering. I'm sorry, a lot of people die because of that sucking that we do. So I can 100% see that. Now, it may be a little bit of hyperbole when it comes to some things, but sitting here and being like, oh, I can't believe people don't like a country that has done many bad things inside and outside of it. Well, I mean, yeah.
idea of being anti-American or blaming America first was something that people were super on guard against, perhaps excessively so. But now I feel like it's kind of the opposite extreme, where so many Americans' default disposition is basically like, yeah, everything here sucks, we suck, sad, but true.
I don't know. So some people think this. You can, I want to take a look at this really quick, because I already loaded this up pre going into this, because I felt like it could be interesting. People have been feeling, you know, down about America's future and everything for a long time. At the moment, it's at its lowest point. So Americans satisfied with the direction that America is going. It's at 18%, which is pretty low. Now, it's not as low as it was in like 2020, which is at like 16%, or in July of 2020 when it was at 13%, or even back here in 2008 when it was 10. I think it bottoms out at 9%, actually. So, you know, it is double what it was back then. It was double what it was back then, but, you know, people, I mean, we haven't had, you know, America's direction in the positive since 9/11. I think it was, yeah, I think it's, actually 9/11 happened, and then we went from like about like 48 to 50%. We love the direction the country is going, and then boom, shot up to then like 70%. We love the direction America was going, basically, you know. It's just crazy stuff. But anyways, like we've been on a downturn, but I don't know, we've been like, I don't know, a lot people have been not liking the direction the country's been going since the country has been going in a direction. So I don't know. It seems really anecdotal, But, I guess we'll see.
And worse, I feel like this type of attitude is now becoming a social signifier of being a sophisticated, educated, thoughtful American in particular. Like, the more intelligent and successful of an American you are, the more you're expected to be sort of down on your country and your fellow countrymen, with a very dark and pessimistic attitude towards your country being one of the defining traits of your worldview and personality. And I want to be very clear about something. I am not...
Oh my gosh, he really is Canadian. I didn't even know that was true. I didn't even know they actually said a boot. I thought that was a joke. I thought that was just like I thought it was just something that like South Park came up with to clown on them. They actually say a boot. Weird projection. I don't know. So you can understand. I mean, like, come on. Like, you can, I'm not sure if he's gonna get into it, but you can easily see how people get that, how people in the country can get that impression, right? When we're like the epicenter of the worst COVID outbreak because people think that the COVID vaccine is going to turn you into a, interior crocodile alligator. It's going to turn you into a fucking iguana. So like millions of people in this country died of a preventable disease that didn't happen in other countries because of what's going on and what our country allowed it to do. Our president literally said that you can inject UV light into your veins to help get rid of COVID. Like QAnon became a massive thing. A reality TV star host became like the president and then was succeeded by a centristy loser who no one actually likes, but they just voted for him because they thought they could get out the guy that they hated more. And so we're now going to be minimum 8 years and probably like even 12 years of the country under the rule of somebody with a president that most Americans genuinely don't like by a very strong margin. The housing is getting worse. The drug crisis is getting worse. Cost of living is getting worse. People are having less benefits at work. The second most populous state, the governor of the second most populous state in the country, literally banned water breaks during the hottest summer that the world has ever seen. And bro's like, I can't believe people don't like America. I mean, I guess we have like a homelessness population that could fill up an entire state that we just don't care to do anything about. Our system's made to move slow, and when things move slow, bad things, pile up and get worse. It just seems very clear to me why somebody would be pessimistic about America. Now, I guess it can become a problem and become a hindrance and definitely can be annoying. And it could just be complaining for complaining's sake and not actually wanting to make the country a better place. But at the same time, you can't be like getting on people for saying shit like this, I don't know, man.
Making a shallow partisan complaint here. As we will soon discuss, I think the sort of anti-Americanism that I'm describing is as much of a right-wing thing as it is a left-wing thing, maybe even more so. It honestly just feels more like a dark fever that's sweeping the US these days, affecting more and more Americans of every persuasion and walk of life. And you don't need to take my word for it. It is easy to find polls documenting the growing pessimism and doubt in the American public, and again, often among upper middle-class Americans in particular. So today, I thought we would talk a bit about this phenomenon and some theories I have about why it's happening. But before we get to that, let us hear a brief
word from you again about a minute and a half into the future.
The United States is obviously not a perfect country. Even someone like me, who admires American culture very much, has to be able to admit that there are many very real, very unique problems plaguing American society that it is not irrational to be angry or upset or worried about. Gun massacres would be one huge example. Political dysfunction another. Health is a big one too, with American life expectancy experiencing a small but significant decline in recent years. But all of that said, it is worth remembering that the US still sits near the top of the list of the safest, healthiest, freest countries that have ever existed. Even by the standard of other rich places like Europe or Canada, Americans generally make more money and enjoy a wider access to a greater variety of creature comforts than anyone else on Earth. America is still very much on the bleeding edge of much of the world's scientific, intellectual, and artistic innovation. And in the realm of foreign affairs, the United States continues to enjoy broad trust in directing the diplomatic and military priorities of the democratic world. So why then does it...
Okay, but like, a lot of that isn't... Okay, like, sure, a lot of that is real, but at the same time, sometimes I feel like some people are like, oh, like people are really pessimistic about America with the whole like, you know, your family members being sucked into a death cult of personality by a Facebook content creator who makes money off of lying to people about health outcomes and telling them that the truth is only on their Facebook page, and that's why they should be paying them. But have you ever thought about how we are at the long end of the table in military talks with other countries? Have you ever thought about how many countries are like, Lockheed Martin, let me pay you, and the government's like, I guess, but if I get a cut, you know, have you ever thought about how you have a TV? Have you ever thought about how you have a phone to even watch this? And while all of those things are true, and some people are going to say this is a little spoiled, but I think that this is just like, I personally believe that this is having a better outlook on the world. I think that all of those things are baseline, you know? When it comes to things like, you can watch TV and a lot of cool artists come from America, and you have a phone and a refrigerator, and the government isn't being overthrown like every 5 seconds. You know, I mean, sure, that's cool. I think that's great, but I think that's a baseline. I think we're at when it comes to how countries function, I think we're at the like bare minimum of, I mean, like, you know, we're not a failed state, true, I guess, by you know, most definitions of the word, that part is true. We're not, but we have a lot of, you know, like basic creature comforts if you can afford them. But when it comes to just like creature comforts that make your life a lot better, it only accentuates how many things you are missing in your life when you look at other countries and they have things as well, and they have like way better things than we do. Our infrastructure is really bad. We don't have any public spaces where we can like hang out and spend time with other human beings. Well, you know what he mentioned, and I'm not sure if he even noticed it, but let's go back really quick. Here.
Variety of, even by the standard of other rich places like Europe or Canada, Americans generally make more money and enjoy a wider access to a greater variety of creature comforts than anyone else on Earth. America is still very much on the bleeding edge of much of the world's scientific, intellectual, and artistic innovation. And in the realm of foreign affairs, the United States continues to enjoy broad trust in directing the diplomatic and military priorities of the democratic world. So I think...
Yeah, but you know what he mentioned is that we have a lot of things. And we do, as Americans, we do have many things. I mean, how many small slave child soldiers, South Sudanese children have, you know, 80% of the Jujutsu Kaisen manga in their room? I think the answer is no, but I think the answer is not that many. But that being said, like, sure, we have a lot of things, but if you have the money to afford them, but there are a lot of things that we're missing, and that human connection is missing because of it. We have prioritized having things and owning things and having money over the real life human connections that you can hold. Like, you know, friendships are at an all-time low. Time spent with other people is an all-time low. Time spent with family is at an all-time low. You know, paid leave is at an all-time low. Pay is at, you know, relatively at an all-time low as well. So there are a lot of things that we're just missing. Sure, we can, if you have the money, you can have things. And the problem is, not only if you don't have the money can you not have things, but you also don't get to spend time with your friends and families either. So like, if you're fucked, you're giga fucked. If you're not fucked, you're still a little fucked. And so, yeah, I can 100% see people being upset. Sure, we have things, and maybe the federal government has made a good deal with Mexico to give the Mexican government more bombs to take on the cartels. But like, how does that make it so I can, you know, spend time with my friends and family more and live a life worth living outside of just having things? Well, the answer is not really. It doesn't really.
And does it seem like Americans have never been more down on their own country? I got 4 things.
Also, that's not true.
I want to blame. Number 1, stupidly extreme political rhetoric. One of the main characteristics of American elections is that they tend to be very competitive and very close. This in turn provides a lot of incentive for American politicians and their supporters to talk about politics in the most over-the-top way possible, because that helps frighten and energize voters to go to the ballot box and swing these tight races. As a result, I'm sure you have noticed how American politics seems to be adopting a permanently apocalyptic tone in which voters are constantly told that the state of their country is so awful and the politicians of the other side are so irredeemably wicked. And this sort of language does seem to work in getting people motivated and excited about politics, even if it is completely out of touch with what 21st century America is actually like. I think it's fair to blame Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign for helping push this whole trend into high gear. He was a
because I can believe that I can believe that somebody can believe this, but I feel like this argument falls apart once you like give like some actual examples. You know, when it comes to just straight. When it comes to most examples, because if we're talking about like the Trumpification and the TikTokification of the Republican Party, I would say, oh hell yeah, 100%. But if he then goes, well, but like the people on the left tell you exactly what the people on the right are doing and what will happen if they get into office. And then that's also, you know, leading to the problem. I would say, no, probably not. Telling the truth to people about what another person wants to do is not, I don't think that's exacerbating division in the country. I think that's just kind of like telling the truth, personally.
Politician uniquely fond of dark and pessimistic rhetoric about America.
We are like, in many cases, a third world country.
With a good example being his horribly bleak 2017 inaugural address, the so-called American Carnage speech, which sought to justify his election with some of the most aggressively anti-American language ever heard from a president, as George Will summarized in the Washington Post. Oblivious to the moment and the setting, the always remarkable Trump proved that something dystopian can be strangely exhilarating. In what should have been a civic liturgy serving national unity and confidence, he vindicated his severest critics by serving up reheated campaign rhetoric about
rusted out factories, scattered like tombstones across the landscape,
and an education system producing students
deprived of all knowledge.
Yes, all. American Carnage-style rhetoric has become very popular with the American right post-Trump, and it often feels like every mainstream conservative in America just wants to spend all of their time whining about what a scum pit America has become, how it's all just illegal immigrants and drag queens and woke corporations and Marxist groomer teachers.
So I think this holds a lot of truth. One thing that I want to touch on here is that there is some truth to some things that they're saying, right? There's some truth to what some conservatives are saying. And that speech about, you know, hollowed out production cities and falling apart infrastructure and places that you used to love becoming, you know, shells of their former selves and all of these things. These are real problems, and that is real, right? And I think it is good to, you know, look the country in the face and tell them about things that are actually happening. And I do think it's important for you to have a sobering understanding of what's actually going on. And I really feel like we've been for a long time deluding a lot of people into every single time we do a speech, everything is on the come up, everything is super great, and everything's going to be fine. And the answer is no, it actually won't. It won't all be fine, and it won't all be great, and it's not all okay. It's actually not. Right. And now I think that they take it to an extreme 100%. But I do think that it's a big normie liberal type thing to just be like, can't you just say can't you just tell me everything's going to be fine so I can sip my wine and watch my soap operas again? But like, no, I'm not going to actually tell you that things are going to be fine, because they're not going to be fine. If we don't, you know, do something about climate change, things are definitely not going to be fine. If we don't do anything about our carceral system or the military industrial complex, if we don't do something about dark money, if we don't do something about dark money in politics, if we don't do something about how the standard of living is going down, or how like we live in like a post-truth type society, like, yeah, things won't be okay if we don't do that. If we don't like understand and try to fix some of the issues going on in like really, you know, historically production focused parts of the country, like those people are going to be completely out of a job, and their children's children are going to be completely out of a job. If we don't say something about what we need to do about the drug problem in this country, things are going to be a problem, and those need to be fixed. And these things have been you know, simmering for decades. even. I mean, the Democrats promised, I still remember this, because like when I heard it for the first time, it blew my mind. The Democrats the Democrats first promised to make, you know, healthcare drugs affordable when I was 7. When I was 7 years old, that was the first time the Democrats made it like their actual stated goal to reduce and make affordable healthcare and like bring down the price of drugs. When I was 7 years old, I am now 24 years old, and in another like 6 months, about 5-6 months, I'm going to be 25 years old, and it's still not going to happen. And it probably won't happen during this next election cycle either. And so, yeah, I can 100% see how like people are going to, how we should talk about these things, and we should, you know, have a sobering look at these things. But I do think conservatives go really far with it, especially when they talk about things that aren't actual issues, like in the way that they think that they're issues, like immigration, or how teachers say that tell children that they shouldn't, you know, kill themselves for being gay.
And all the rest. I guess a nonstop diet of this sort of stuff is supposed to persuade you to want to vote Republican, but it also just seems to be bumming a lot of people out. Like, what's even the point? This country has become a third world hellhole, as Ann Coulter subtitled one of her recent bestsellers. Over on the political left, however, things are hardly better. The freakout at Trump's unexpected election, along with the rise of Bernie Sanders, who is only slightly less of a demagogue than Trump, I think did quite—
What? What? Hello? Slightly less than the Bernie Sanders, man who wants your children to have health care. Bernie Sanders, man who wants your grandma to have health care. Only slightly less of a demagogue than Donald Trump? Really? Really? Example?
Quite a lot to consolidate an equally apocalyptic tone on the progressive side that is only getting more common. One of my favorite examples of this is The Atlantic, a center-left magazine that once sought to thoughtfully document the complexities of American life, but now just spends most of its time publishing doomer porn about how awful America is. Recent headlines include, "America is running out of time. America is headed towards collapse. And of course, we are living in a failed state." This—
Okay, well,
America is. Recent headlines include—
Okay, let's actually look at some of these things, because a lot of conservatives love to do this, where they just throw a bunch of headlines at you without actually explaining what they are. Like, oh no, they said something bad. A reader's guide to the Atlantic magazine's coverage of the worsening democratic crisis. America's running out of time. Well, we literally, like, the Atlantic is, what do you mean by center left? You mean like Joe Biden? You mean like Hillary Clinton? Is that what you're talking about? Arguably center left? How are you going to be like, well, Bernie Sanders, like what has Bernie said? Because he's like, oh, Bernie Sanders does. What has Bernie Sanders said? I want to know. What is it? Just give me an example. I'd love an example of what Bernie Sanders has said that you make him think that he's like a horrible Democrat. What has he said that's, for one, not true, and something that he shouldn't have said? Because if it's like he should have, all of the things that he said are true, and all of the things that he said are real, and they are actual problems that we do need to take care of that haven't been taken care of by our politicians, but I just don't like that he said them because it made me sad when he said it, then I don't think that's a real argument. And I think that's how a child looks at the world. That's how a child does politics. Like, you know, no offense to this guy, but that's like if that's what he's trying to say or something, and I'm not sure because we're going to watch the rest of the video, but if that's anywhere near what he's saying, like, that's how a child views politics. I don't like it. I don't like that he said something that's true because it made me feel bad about America thinking about it. But if it's true, then it's kind of true. A reader's guide to the Atlantic coverage of the worsening democratic crisis. We literally had the last president rally his troops to try to overthrow the government because he lost the election. Like, don't you think, I mean, that's kind of true. This is about January 6th. Wait, he did this article is about January 6th? History finds us two ways to borrow from Hemingway, gradually then suddenly. 1 year after Donald Trump led his supporters in an attempted coup against the United States, the nation is still very much in the throes of that attack. That seems like something that you should know about. That's actually really important. Are you just mad at this article because should they have changed it to one bad thing happened once in America, I guess, but please don't worry about it because nothing is ever really a problem. Like, what? I mean, maybe like America's running out of time is like I think it is true. There are actual problems that we do that are timely and we need to take care of. That is a factual thing.
America is running out of time.
America is headed towards collapse. History suggests how to save it. Well, this is literally a hopeful article about how to stop bad things from happening in America.
Is headed towards collapse. And of course, we are living
in a failed state. The coronavirus didn't break America. It revealed what was already broken. This is true. Governors opening up and letting people get killed by a preventable disease for political, like the governor of Alabama literally said we'd rather die. They said they were in a death cult, bro. They all said we'd literally rather die than listen to the federal government when it comes to social distancing. Maybe I can agree with this one where it's the title is a little, it's a little clickbaity. Sure. Who's Demon Mama? You'll figure it out. But maybe the title is a bit clickbaity. Sure, I guess. But to sit, I don't know. This seemed like a weird thing to get mad at. Kill your grandma for the economy. Why would people say that they don't like America? Okay.
In a failed state. This is what sophisticated urban Americans are supposed to believe.
Wouldn't we say another country like ours was a failed state at this point?
Are we a failed state?
This country is an embarrassment. This is a failed state.
But in substance, it is often barely different from the fear-mongering of some Fox News demagogue like Tucker Carlson.
This is the behavior of a failed state.
Among young Zoomer lefty types, it is pretty much the same. You spend any time following leftist accounts on YouTube or TikTok, and you're bombarded with young Americans confidently describing their country as a
capitalist hellscape that I appear to be trapped in with no end in sight.
I don't believe that we are heading towards a dystopian society. I believe that the dystopian society is already here and we are full-blown in the midst of it.
So we're living in a fascist regime.
Usually from the comfort of their middle-class bedrooms. I will give President Biden...
So true! The middle class in America doesn't have any real problems, guys, right? Wait, where's the middle class again? Oh, so true. If you have an apartment, you're basically fine and you don't have real problems, because people working paycheck to paycheck and barely having enough time, energy, or money to spend time doing anything else besides working and sleeping are basically they're living the dream. They're living the world's greatest dream. It's the greatest ever, They have no real... Listen, you can't be mad at capitalism. You have an iPhone. You ever think about that? How you have an iPhone? So you don't have problems because you have an iPhone. Problems is when no iPhone. And no problems is when you have an iPhone. Have you ever thought about how we're literally not all getting executed at all points in time of the day? Yeah, that's what I thought. Be thankful. My thing is really, if we're going to compare America to once again South Sudan or Myanmar or any other country that's literally falling apart at the moment, then sure, I guess, but I think that's a really low bar. I think that's just a really, really low bar, if I'm gonna be honest with you.
Credit for mostly standing against the grain of this wing of the left in a way that Trump clearly has not done with the right.
I am more optimistic, my word it is now. I am more optimistic about the possibilities for America than I ever have been. We are better positioned than any country in the world.
But Biden is also a very old man who seems to be operating on the assumption that today's Democrats want some sort of upbeat JFK type character leading them. I wish that was true, but a lot of influential voices on the American left seem pretty eager to convince me otherwise. The second big thing I would blame for rising...
Like what? I don't know. So, listen. I don't know if he knows much about America, but here's the thing, okay? Once bitten, twice shy. Does anyone know what that means? Does anyone know what that means? Once bitten, twice shy. You get it? Yeah. Maybe JFK, but honestly, FDR, I feel is the last president who not only promised a big game but was also able to deliver on it. JFK couldn't even deliver on everything, mostly because he was killed before he could even really attempt to do stuff. But LBJ did some great things as well. But that is way before all of our generations. You have to talk, if you're gonna be talking about generations today, you have to talk about the politics of generations today, which are far different from generations of JFK or FDR or LBJ or Lincoln or we're living in a different country. It may have the same constitution, and it has the same name and same flag, but it's a different country in every single regard. And we have different problems in every single regard. Not RFK Jr. We don't talk about RFK Jr. I mean, speaking of, if you want to speak about JFK, then I mean, we can speak about his like legacy and how one of his literal nephew has turned into one of the top 5 most dangerous voices in the entire country when it comes to COVID misinformation. Like, most of the COVID misinformation comes from just a few people, especially on Facebook, and literally RFK Jr., JFK's nephew, was one of those people who did that. Like, if we're going to be talking about the words to the actions done in society, RFK has probably contributed to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people across this country and across the world with the type of rhetoric that he's been putting off, okay? So we're going to say that for one. And on top of it, I say once bitten, twice shy, because the first bite, okay, was Obama. The first bite was Obama. All right. And we can get into the weeds of like whether or not Obama tried to do as much as he could or did as much as he could with the type of with like the type of governments that he had and everything. But like at the end of the day, there are a lot of problems in society that were not fixed, and we're still even facing the same problems that we were when Obama was around when it comes to things like Flint, Michigan, when it comes to things like homelessness and poverty. Healthcare is still a massive issue. There are massive problems in the society, and Obama promised a lot and didn't deliver on a lot of it. And once again, we can debate on like how much is actually his fault versus how much is the other Democrats and how far left they actually were and what happened. But at the end of the day, we'd all agree that Obama didn't promise more than he definitely could deliver on. And so after that, Americans became quite shy. We were bitten and we've become quite shy. And the next person to come by and promise the world, for like the general Americans, because Trump was like a president for a very small amount of Americans. If we're going to be honest with ourselves, more people like Biden and will always like Biden more than they like Trump. And so because of that, people are pretty shy about listening to their politicians now because they feel like a lot of the things that they're going to say are either not going to come true or just blatant lies. And I can't get mad at them for that because it's kind of true in some regards. And so people aren't, if we're going to be talking about, you know, back when the Democratic Party was super hopeful, back in 2008 when Obama, you know, rose to power, his whole thing was about hope. Like, does anybody remember his hope speech? Does anybody remember how profound his hope speech was when he got elected? Because it changed how a lot of people thought America was and was going to be, and it brought the country together. But people feel really bad about bringing things. People feel bad that, you know, we keep saying we're going to bring the country together, everything's going to be fine, when it's not fine. And it hasn't been fine. And it doesn't seem like we're in any position that it's going to be fine, really, at any point in time soon, honestly. But his hope speech was really great. The problem is he didn't really back it up, you know? He didn't really back it up. And there are a lot of problems that the Republican governors did to make that a big issue, and Republicans in the Senate did to make that a big issue. But at the end of the day, yeah, there are a lot of problems. And that was the first bite. And so instead of just being like, I think we're going to do good things and I want to do this good thing and that good thing and good things are good and bad things are bad, so that's why you should vote for me and be hopeful. How about you give us a reason to be? Have you ever thought about that? Giving us like a reason to be hopeful outside of you have an iPhone, you know? Like I can completely see why like younger voters and younger, you know, Gen Z are going to be distrustful of like people even like Biden when he was like, when we tell him about our problems and he literally says, fuck off. When he's like, oh, these youngins complain too much. Like, okay, then fuck you and fix it yourself then, geezer. How about that? And then they go, I can't believe nobody thinks America's going in a good direction. Well, sorry. How about give us something to be hopeful for instead of just telling us we should be?
American self-loathing is kind of similar, and it is the increasing prevalence of conspiracy theories in American culture. Conspiracy theories can take a lot of different forms, but in an American context, there seems to be a particular fixation on ones that portray basically any institution of power in American society as being run by evil liars who have no higher ambition than abusing and enslaving the American people. The COVID
Oh my gosh, bro, is he gonna? I swear, if he tries to bring up things like the military-industrial complex or something, I'm gonna pull my hair out. I'm gonna lose it.
outbreak obviously heralded a dramatic rise in this sort of thinking. But recent years have also seen a surge in increasingly grand and creative conspiracy theories about all sorts of things. Everything from how all the big politicians and movie stars belong to a pedophilic, blood-drinking sex cult, to old chestnuts about the Pentagon staging an elaborate cover-up of alien visitors, possibly because the aliens are also part of the blood-drinking sex cult. Obviously, a lot of this is just crackpot nonsense spread by professional idiots. But even among people who should really know better, I feel like a certain mode of conspiratorial thinking starts to passively set in when you are constantly surrounded by people spreading conspiracy theories all of the time. Conspiracy theories that turned out to be true is a very clickbaity headline you see a lot these days. And I think Americans face a lot of pressure to buy into at least one conspiracy theory to prove that they're not total saps. The Epstein suicide thing, I think, would be an example of a kind of smart person's conspiracy theory, even though in practice it is no less dumb than any of the others.
Season 2 is on the way, so in the end, he obviously didn't kill himself. Just like Jeffrey Epstein. Shut up! I know he's your friend, but I don't care. A
lot of the anti-corporate rhetoric that Americans like to thoughtlessly toss around can be a...
It's just... I don't know. That conspiracy isn't new though. I don't know. I think he's saying it's new because he is recognizing it now. Like he's seeing it now, so it's new to him, so he's gonna keep calling it new. That's what I think mostly.
A form of soft conspiracism as well. You know, this idea that the corporations are these shadowy puppet masters.
No! The corporations, dude. Everybody, all the young lefties love their new conspiracy theory of the corporations aren't actually your friends and only care about money and could get rid of you at any point in time because you're not important to them and actually their cash flow is. Can you imagine the conspiracy theory that your boss doesn't actually care about you and your friends and family do actually? Oh my gosh. Can you imagine the conspiracy theory that the corporations are like do things and lobby for their own personal money making that can be contrary to what your average stakeholder would find preferable for a job? Conspiracies, dude. I don't know. Let's see. I don't know. That's what I'm gonna do that at the front. And then it's up to him to prove me wrong now.
Who have made a sham of American democracy.
So we've just given our politics to the corporations, and now the corporations run our politics.
You're telling me we live in a democracy? No, we don't, man. It's over.
Even if you don't elaborate on this thesis in any way, just saying this is an easy way to get credit as an American who gets it. But I think it is easy to lose track of the
Okay, so I'll say this. Some people's idea about how corporations lobby and are infused into our politics can be just like stupid insane. I believe that can be 100% true. I don't know the rest of that Cenk Uygur clip, so I don't know what he was saying. I don't know the rest of that Michael Knowles clip, so I have no clue what he was saying. Simply saying something and it being like saying that you can say the same thing but in a different context, it can be correct or incorrect. It just depends. So I don't know exactly what they were saying, whether or not it was correct or incorrect. I can't look back through literally every single second of every 2 seconds of every video that he pulls up to play of people saying something that he doesn't wish that they were saying. But it's Jover. Lobbying suck, and lobbying is pretty detrimental to the country. And the way in which in the way in which that corporations are involved in our politics is pretty bad, if I'm going to be honest with you, and can sway elections a lot. Like $5,000 in a small house election somewhere in Bufu nowhere can completely swing in one direction or the other. Yeah, it can all the time. All these leftists, weirdo leftists who think their family loves them.
Deeply anti-American consequences of all of this. Steady consumption of conspiracy theories encourages the belief that basically all the major pillars of American civilization, the government, military, business, banks, schools, and so on, are actively sinister and working day and night to harm the people of the United States, if not the business all the major pillars of American civilization, you know, the government, the military, business, banks, schools, and so on, are actively sinister and working day and night to harm the people of the United States, if not the entire world. And really, who wants to be proud of a country where that's how things work? The third big contributor to anti-American malaise is people like me.
I don't know. So here's the thing. There can be people in those structures of power and those institutions who do only really care about themselves and who do use their power for their own gain. And we do have a decent amount of corruption in the country, and it is a massive problem. And it's a problem for all of us, and it has dragged down the country, and it has lost a lot of, it has made us lose a lot of things that we shouldn't have. There's no reason that the Pentagon should be losing like billions of dollars all the time and they can't keep their budget straight, you know? Like, where's that money going and what is it doing? And is it falling into the hands of bad people? Sure, 100%. Now, I can say that if you think that these institutions are like inherently evil or something and there's nothing that we can do to change them, and they're like controlled by like Satan or something to make the world a bad place, then sure, probably we could talk about that, and that's probably not something that you should be believing in, right? The Pentagon audit is a joke, right? Right? But I will say, some conspiracy theories are true in the sense of some people do conspire and they do it for their own personal gain. That it, and sometimes it happens in high places of power, which just is true. Like you just have to have a good reason for believing what you believe, and typically we wouldn't call it a conspiracy theory because there's probably a reason for you to believe that, and so we wouldn't say it's a conspiracy. We just say that we're looking into something. There's, you know, inklings of corruption, which I don't think is like a problem. We just call it corruption. We don't call it conspiracy. We could just call it corruption, usually. You know, in America, rich people's conspiracy is just normal ass corruption. No, don't hold your government accountable. Why would you do that? No, I don't think he's saying that you should never hold the government accountable, but I think he's finding little situations where people take it too far and then blowing it out to like everybody. And not talking about these things as in depth as I think they should, probably because he wants to keep the video kind of short. But at the same time, I don't know. I feel like he's doing a disservice to a lot of the people who, you know, talk about these issues and are bringing a lot of these things to light, and painting them out to be kind of like crazy or annoying or stupid for talking about things that are real and that we should be, you know, cognizant of. You know what I mean? There's no way you can tell me that the amount of money DOD receives is used correctly or appropriately. Well, the fact that they keep losing so many billions and they are never able to tell you where it goes is like you know, a thing there. So here's things, okay? Here's two things, and we can touch on this because you keep bringing it up. The DOD and the Pentagon gets a lot of money and they audit and they can't find where all the money goes, right? And we go there. We should look into that and know where that money goes. That's not a conspiracy theory. Jumping to and the likelihood of there being corruption in there is very high, right? And then, you know, let's keep that in. I accidentally said jumping to. Now we're jumping to going from that of what we know to filling in the blanks of what we don't know. That's when we reach actual like harmful conspiracy. Like they're sending all the money to PDF files to find more babies to sip on their adrenochrome, to reach a higher plane, to contact the aliens, to turn us all into human batteries like the Matrix, where we all have Baja Blast in our IVs dripped into our veins while they power their ships off of infinite energy of our quivering jowls. And I just think that's where it goes into weirdo conspiracy type shit, right? That's where it goes into weirdo conspiracy type shit. But if you go like money's missing and you can't lose that amount of money without knowing where it goes, and the likelihood of there's somebody or some people in there using it for bad actions or to better their own life at the expense of the taxpayer I don't think that's a conspiracy theory. I think that's a pretty valid thing to believe. But you just filling in the blanks of what you don't know for like everything else and saying that's exactly what's happening, that's when you reach conspiracy. And I think that you need to separate those two things, because pointing out something that's a real problem and real corruption and then jumping to a conclusion about what that corruption actually means, no, those are two different things.
which is to say, foreigners. The world is obviously a much smaller place than it used to be, with more international conversation than ever before. But when it comes to conversation about the US, much of the talk is depressingly one-sided. There's an old saying about US-Canada relations that I think can be extended to a lot of foreigners in general, which is that while Americans are benevolently oblivious about us, we are malevolently well-informed about them. I would even go further and—
I don't know shit about Canada, if I'm gonna be honest with you. And I think it's better that way, because I don't think I need to. I'm sorry to the Canadians. I don't think I should really give a shit about what's going on in Canada. When was the last time Canada has done something that I should give a shit about, besides like you all having a massive wildfire up there that led to us, like, you know, having a lot of smoke down here? And when we have a lot of smog and smoke down here, you guys have a lot of, you know, smoke and shit up there. Besides that, and us like dealing with climate change, like, why should I give a shit about Canada, honestly? What are you gonna do? Sink another one of our Titanics? What the fuck? Yeah, unless Canada's doing genocide again. Like, I don't know why I should care about what's going on in Canada. Like, if they do something worth like caring about, I'll listen. Actually, I lied. I lied when I said that I didn't care about Canada and I didn't know anything about Canada, because I do know something about Canada. And what I know is that their program that they have to help keep up the amount of the things in culture that they make is like doing really well, because we got Cuphead out of it. And so Cuphead came from like that Canada program to give money to artists and game developers to make more media, so Canada doesn't get completely overrun and stomped out by America's gigaculture, because we have the world's greatest culture.
And say that a lot of foreigners are even benevolently ignorant about their own countries too. The only thing they are malevolently well-informed about is the US. In other words, I feel like a lot of American conversations with foreigners these days tend to take the form of the foreigner being very up-to-date with all of the bad things going on in America, while only sharing the comparatively better things about where he's from. And the American just nods politely and goes, gee whiz, because Americans are a very friendly, credulous people who often do not like second-guessing foreigners. Again, this is something that I think you can see happening on both the left and the—
Was that a joke? Did he say that? I can't tell if did he say that seriously? Because when I was listening to it, I thought it was going to be like a hyperbole joke. Did he say that seriously? Semi-serious? I can't tell. Can it just pass 40 million people this year? Oh wow, congratulations. Canada is at 38 million. California is at 40 million. That's really funny. That's really funny. That's actually incredibly funny. I actually can't tell if that's... I listened to it again, and I still can't really tell if it's a joke. I think, like, the gee whiz is what he was supposed to... Like, I'm not sure if that's just supposed to be... I can't tell if that's supposed to be for just, like, you know, goofing on like, us being, like, gullible or something, or if it's supposed to be the sarcasm for, like, the whole thing. That's definitely... I know the gee whiz, like, part after that, that's supposed to be sarcastic, but before that, I don't know. Wait, let's listen a little bit longer and see.
Again, this is something that I think you can see happening on both the left and the right. On the one side, you have, say, Brits and Australians bragging about their healthcare and gun control. And then on the other side, you have like Poles and Hungarians going on about how super Christian and unwoke they are.
Wait a second. No, it wasn't sarcastic. He's being honest. Okay, so let's talk about this. I don't know, maybe it's just him. For me personally, when I see conversations between foreigners and Americans, it's typically us being like, this is a problem in America, and then foreigners go, why is that an actual problem? That's a real problem? Are you sure? And we go, yes, and they go, I can't believe that's an actual problem. Those are the conversations that I've seen personally. So I don't know, maybe he's seen something differently. But for me, it's been the opposite, where foreigners are like, America seems kind of cool, and then Americans are like, man, this is a huge issue. Or like, personally, I've been seeing this on like online a lot recently, where, because I don't live in a place that has like a crazy amount of foreigners. But I've been seeing this a lot recently, where people are like, I can't believe that's a problem in America. We don't have like that same problem. I think there can be utility to this. I think what he's saying, he may be missing something, okay? He may be missing something in these conversations, because I think these are important conversations. I don't think it's that they think that they only say things that are great about their country, and then they only hear about bad things from our country. I think it's more like, we have different problems, and a lot of problems that we have aren't problems that a lot of countries have. And so that's why it kind of seems like that. They have other problems. Canada has a lot of problems. I'm not going to say they have less problems, but they have a lot of problems still. It could be a similar amount of problems, they're just different problems. And so he could be from Canada and be like, oh, you guys have this, that, and the third, and you guys are so cool on the world stage. And we can be like, well, like, my grandma died because she couldn't afford healthcare. And then they're like, well, I mean, you have an iPhone, so you all have like TVs, so I mean, like, things are on the come up, aren't they? Well, you know, from my point of view, no, they're not actually. And I think it's more like, I think it's more like when you see these conversations happening, it's usually overlapping. And when we talk about other countries, it's usually so we can highlight how other countries have done something good that we can take and to use our country, to use in our country to make it better. That's why I think a lot of these conversations are happening. So we can highlight how other countries have succeeded where we have failed, so we can succeed where they've succeeded as well. That doesn't mean that we don't believe that they don't have any failure. I think if you ask a country, like a regular American, does America have like, you know, way more problems than a lot of countries? Then I think a lot of them would say yes. But I think that's just because they live in America and they know all the problems. They don't know all the problems in other countries, right? And when you go to other countries, you're like, you know, you go to tourist spots where you don't see all of the problems because they're tourist spots. They literally are made to hide all of the problems the country has. That's literally the point, right? But you like hop off the beaten path and you'll very quickly see a lot of problems going on, like a lot of problems. I don't think that they think that a lot of Americans think that countries are like problemless or we're unique, but we have unique problems for a first world country. If we compare ourselves to other first world countries, we may have more problems, possibly, but we definitely have problems that those other countries aren't having in the same degree or severity that we are. And I think that's the big problem here. I wouldn't say that we just are like, oh, the people are like, oh, my country's so amazing and your country's so cringe, and we go, so true, and that's what's going on. I don't think that really happens.
This can even rise to fairly grotesque extremes. I've seen Americans sharing propaganda from the Russians or the Chinese and being like, check out these obviously superior societies. Just look at how macho their army is and how futuristic their cities are. America's doomed, and frankly, we deserve it. At one time, the mainstream American way to deal...
I haven't seen... I think you know what? I personally think he's reading a lot more pessimism into those tweets than... those types of tweets and everything than I honestly think that he should. Now, depending on where he's looking, sure, you can find that. Yeah, there are definitely people online who do that. But is it, guys, when I see tweets like, yo, this city's like so far in the future, this country's like so far in the future, is usually just some person who looks at neon lights on a skyscraper and goes, whoa, they're so far in the future, whoa, you know? And then coupled with it, like, I don't know, man, I've been seeing this recently. It's been one tweet that's like, China is 3,000 years in the future. And then it'll be like LED lights on a skyscraper. And then they'll be like, China is 3,000 years in the past. And then it'll be like a Chinese person who lives in like the outback, cutting up a little critter to cook for their family. You know what I mean? It's super back and forth. It's so super weird, right? Random thing, cool. But when I see a lot of those types of tweets, they're usually not being like, America sucks, they're so bad. They're usually like, wow, look how cool this is. I guess maybe if you like look at it in comparison to the other things people are saying, or maybe some people who like use it and say things like, well, why can't we have some things like this? Depending on where they live, yeah. Here's a big problem, okay? We're nowhere near as federalized as a lot of other countries are. I think this is a big problem that he may be missing here that I haven't heard him touch on. We're not as federalized as a lot of other countries are. Like, it's even in our name. It's the United States of America, okay? So each and every state has their own government, and they have a lot of leeway for what they can do. So one person living in one state could have problems that look nothing like people who live in another state, all because their own state government gets to do like most of the heavy lifting for what goes on in the state. It does most of the heavy lifting, just kind of period. Most laws that you think that you don't like are more likely or not going to be state laws and not federal laws. So yeah, one city in one state may be great and fantastic, and another one in another state may be terrible. And most people live on the coast and everything, and housing prices are getting to be a problem. And there are a lot of problems, but it changes from state to state. So maybe you'll look in California, you'll see a lot of people talking about how housing prices are a problem, and affording to live is a problem. Like the cost of living is starting to exceed, the benefits. and maybe if you see some, he says he drives down to California and stuff, I can imagine that's a huge problem, and he sees that a lot, probably because that's a really big problem there, and it may not be a problem in many other states, or to the same severity in any other states. I mean, California has enough homeless people to fill up a state, to fill up an entire state. They could. You could take the homeless population and put them in a 100 square mile block, and then they could basically be their own state. There's so many homeless people in California. That's a real problem. They literally chase homeless people out into the desert in California. I think people have a reason to be pretty upset with what's going on, the state of affairs there. But yeah, since we're so not federalized, a lot of these problems are incredibly unique to where you live, how you live, and the situation that your life is in. There's so many things that play into it, and it's nowhere near the same as a lot of other countries that their federal government has way more power than ours is allowed to have. The most enlightened centrist. Big brain.
With foreign propaganda was to point out that it was, in fact, propaganda, and then mock or question it. But these days, a combination of low American self-esteem and a desire to be contrarian has made that sort of thing the boring normie take that no one wants to be associated with anymore. It is equally true, however, that a lot of non-American countries have their own self-esteem issues, making it less socially acceptable than ever to publicly admire the US, even at a time when much of the world has a greater appetite than ever for American culture. And the last big social force I want to...
Okay, but Chinese people buying NBA primetime pay-per-view subscriptions doesn't necessarily make my life better. Is that gonna pay for my grandma's medical bills? Okay. I mean, cool, I guess. Well, a lot of people in Mexico are using Google. Okay, cool. That's cool. I'm happy for them. That's interesting. That's super cool.
Blame for rising anti-Americanism is perhaps a somewhat unconventional one, namely capitalism. Not in the way that the TikTok kids would blame capitalism, however. For all of its flaws, I think capitalism is mostly great and should be appreciated as an engine of American achievement. But at the same time...
Yeah, I bet you... Well, okay. Well, it seems like you have a... fundamental disagreement with the people who are suffering from American capitalism, but okay. Well, to me, a Canadian, it seems like capitalism is doing really great for people who live in America. And the people who live in America who are actually living day to day with the capitalism that they've been, grown up under, I think they're complaining too much about. Why does nobody like America? All they do is just complain too much about. Have you seen the Las Vegas orb? Have you seen the orb? There's a really big orb in Las Vegas, and it's really cool. And it's and that's why I love capitalism. Obviously, that's a bit reductive. It's actually very reductive. But at the same time, sure, yeah, capitalism has. You can't disagree that capitalism has done a lot to increase the amount of money in the country that flows around. That is true. That does happen. But with a lot of money, that when one person makes, when one person makes $10, somebody makes 5 cents. And if that continues for long enough, things start to become a massive issue for the people who don't make that much, cost of living, I mean, capitalism did bring us housing. It also brought us, capitalism did bring us some housing and some entertainment. It also brought us the prices for that housing and entertainment and food and cars and just existing, which seems to be outpacing, what is bringing us. Once again, America is great if you have the money to pay for how great things are, but it's actually pretty bad when you don't have the money to pay for any of it, and that's the big problem. And renting, that is true.
And one of the dark sides of capitalism is the buying and selling of useless crap, which in turn requires a lot of sensationalistic marketing and advertising. And I think that anti-American...
Wait! Pause! One of the hallmarks of capitalism is not buying and selling useless crap. One of the hallmark of capitalism is buying and selling useful crap. It's actually buying and selling essential crap like water, housing, food, healthcare, medicine, you know, those things. I think that, can we talk about, instead of talking about, you know, NBA and iPhone, you know, NBA, iPhone, McDonald's, Burger King, how about we, yeah, video games, how about we talk about things like, you know, the essentials? Ouch! Insulin. I can't believe all these diabetic Americans are complaining so much about their price of insulin. Did you know that LASIK eye surgery has gotten less expensive in the last 30 years?
Has proven itself a surprisingly powerful force when it comes to pitching products. The crypto craze would be a good example. Cryptocurrencies are not terribly useful things for most people in the sense of
Wait, does he bring up the problems of capitalism in America and the only thing he has to say is crypto? He's not going to be talking about those other like essential necessities that are being bought and sold and price gouged to people, which is causing, you know, a lot of problems in America. It's crypto? Is that okay?
Something that you have an obvious need for in day-to-day life. They thus have to be marketed primarily as an investment, but even that only makes sense if you assume that something in the future is going to make crypto more valuable than it is today. Say, the total collapse of the American dollar. So that is what the crypto bros constantly predict. They say that the entire American monetary system is an enormous fraud in order to push their product, just as the gold people did before them, and all sorts of equally dodgy investment advisors do as well. A lot of red pill style male self-improvement.
We just moved on. Capitalism in America, and the only brings up capitalism in America, and the only thing he has to bring up for why people are upset about the state of the world in America is NFTs and cryptocurrency. Okay. I don't like this video. I think I'm going to be claiming, with 16 minutes in, I'm going to be claiming this as a bad video. I don't like it.
Movement stuff is marketed in a similarly anti-American way. This idea that American society is some sort of debased feminist hellhole that their online courses will help you overcome.
Because America is a failed society.
Wow. Okay.
America has failed.
Gynocentric hyper gynophilia. Wait, what was that? I forgot all the red pill terms. I know they say gynocentric. What is it like? Gynocracy. Yeah, gynocracy. Pussyocracy. What was that? What was that phrase about when women date up? I forget what it's called. It's called like hyper something. I forget. Hypergamy. Yeah, gynocentric hypergamy society. It's a failed state. You think, but the reason why Andrew Tate thinks it's a failed state because he's been accused of, you know, sexually assaulting women, and a world where women get taken seriously for claiming that men have sexually assaulted them is a failed state to him.
If you can marry a woman and she can divorce you, take all of your money, take your children, and decide to turn your son into a girl and force hormones on him at 5 years or 8 years old, whatever, that's a failed society.
Possibly by
me when I say things that aren't real. Me when I say things that listen, okay, if I'm gonna be honest with you, if you like today, these days, the likelihood of you being a perfect great dad, and you getting like losing complete custody of your children is so wildly incredibly low that it's like anonymous with it's synonymous with a conspiracy theory at this point. I'm going to be completely honest with you.
ditching America altogether and getting a nice passive trad life in Thailand or Romania. And then there is, of course, the firearms industry, which sells a lot of guns by implying that America is a vastly more dangerous country than it is, which then fosters a different sort of anti-Americanism as people come to resent living in a country full of guns. I'm not quite sure what the progressive equivalent of this sort of thing would be. Maybe the aggressive marketing of all of those anti-racism courses and programs and books and things, which likely have the net effect of making the American middle class think of—
Wait, is he going to talk about the gun industry abusing the Constitution to sell more firearms to people that kill people to anti-racism corporate classes?
Of their country as being a vastly more hateful and bigoted place than it probably is. So, in conclusion—
My man said probably. My bro does not know shit. He said probably. It's like, they keep talking about racism. Why? I saw a black guy. He wasn't being lynched the last time I was in California. They're always like, oh, so racist, so racist. You had a black president, bro. Everything is like, stop selling these racist courses. It's not even like that bad. Bro, white Canadian goes to California, claims racism in America isn't that bad. Oh, it's so good. White Canadian goes to California twice for Comic-Con, proclaims that racism is over in America. It's really not that bad. So true, buddy. You know what? He got me there. I can't get him on that one. He got me there. He got me. Don't think it, don't say it. Don't think it, don't say it. Don't think it, don't say it. Don't think it, don't say it.
Just want to once again emphasize that I am not saying Americans have nothing in their country worth complaining about, or even nothing worth being full of rage about. They have plenty of both, and it is good that Americans feel so comfortable saying so. Coming from Canada, a country whose smug self-satisfaction can get pretty obnoxious, I often quite envy America's skill at self-criticism. It is a real testament to American openness that someone like, say, Noam Chomsky, who has basically been complaining about America full-time for the last 60 years, can be so famous and celebrated, which is certainly not something a lot of other countries can say about their dissidents. But I do think that self-criticism, like all things, has to be consumed in moderation. And I really do feel like over the last decade or so, the pendulum has swung too far to one side, with anti-Americanism becoming too fashionable among too many without any countervailing rise in patriotic cultural trends to balance it out. If I may speak to my American audience sincerely for a moment.
One moment before you do. I will say, one thing that wasn't touched on here that I think needs to be is the fact that criticism of your country can be the greatest form of love. You know how your country can be, you know how your country is, and you know how it can be better. Why in the world will we just spend all day, every day, just talking about how we have iPhone and chicken nuggets? Because we do. Most of you all do have an iPhone, and most of you all have eaten chicken nuggets recently. And so, yeah, that's great that we have iPhone chicken nugget, but I think we're wasting time talking about everything that we think is so based and epic pilled, when we could talk about how to make the country better, because there are actual, real, genuine problems that we haven't been able to actually fix. You know what I mean? How is Canadian a real accent? Well, I mean, like, it depends on where I don't know where this type of accent from Canada is, but I guess it's like BC, because he says he visits California and not New York a lot. Like Quebec has like an accent too, you know. So it is some crazy stuff going on up there. There's some his accent is fake. No one says a boot. I don't think is that true? I don't think that's true. I think there are some a boot Canadians out there. Definitely not BC. He's just playing it up for an act. Is he? You think he's lying about his accent? Are you sure? There are Canadians who say a boot. That is real. That's a real thing. They actually do that. Some of them. Anyways, I think criticism can be the biggest form of flattery because you know how it can be better. So cool. Epic. Like if you show somebody your art and you're being critical, and I think if you're political about, you know, if you're not just like talking for no reason, I think you should be being critical about your country, you know? Otherwise, you're wasting my time, if I'm going to be honest with you. It's just nice, but it's a complete waste of time. If I'm going to be, you know, 100% real with you, to talk about things that you just love. Oh, that I love America so much. Everything's so cool. You know, just let's talk about things that we can make better. Yeah, those things are cool. Great. I'm glad. The people who are benefiting from them, they can like spend time talking about how great it is. Our job as me, like an activist, my job is to talk about things that are bad because I want them to be good instead. But anyways, he's going to talk to us. All right, Americans, he's going to talk to us. Let's see what he has to say.
I just want to say that it is one of the greatest blessings of my life that I was born in Canada, a place that is such a great country to live, in large part because of its deeply symbiotic relationship with the United States. I think it is very important for citizens of US allies like myself to be very grateful for the many things we enjoy as a direct result of our country having such close ties to the US, including...
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. We did that for you.
Including military protection, access to US markets, and the many fruits of American innovation. But it is also worth remembering that these good times will not continue unless Americans continue to have faith in themselves and inhabit a culture that encourages them to define themselves more by their successes than failures. Because remember, failure is not special.
I'm kind of... You know what? I wonder if this video, in any part, I'm not saying it's the whole video, but in any part is fueled by him being like, fueled by him worrying about the deteriorating relationship between Canada and America. And he's like, I don't like that because it'd make my life worse. So I want to talk to Americans about how they should like their country better because it would make my country better in comparison to. Which, I mean, I don't think that's wrong to want to think that or believe that. I don't think that's like incorrect. But I do wonder like how biased this is now. I am wondering now. Suck my nuts, Canadoid. No, that's really funny. That's really funny.
Everybody fails at everything, all of the time, countries as much as people. The only interesting question is whether your failures are eclipsed by your triumphs. And triumphs are always impressive because they're rare. Looking in from the outside, I think that America's triumph to failure ratio is pretty good. Americans don't have to agree with me on that, but at the very least, I think it is a question that deserves more thought than it's been getting.
I feel like it's very ahistorical. Once bitten, twice shy. We were very hopeful, but then the hope turned into pessimism because nothing got better, and things haven't gotten better in a long fucking time. And so, yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense how people are going to be upset about it. Yeah. So, I'm going to say it, a little goofball status. I don't like this video very much. I think it's a bit uninformed, but I don't know what else he does. So, I mean, Godspeed, I guess. Have a good day. Goodness. Good golly, Miss Molly. Oh, sorry. I didn't see you there. If you're enjoying the content, hit the subscribe button. If you don't, it'll make Boo very sad. I know a bunch of you who are watching are not subscribed. Join the frenzy. You won't regret it. Thank you, Boo.